turn to the spend plan purpose. Most of you have heard something about spend plan development in some way, shape, or form. If you remember from the RD's initial briefing, he says that he's process-oriented, and one of the characteristics he identified for every process is that they have management tools, process management tools. This spend plan is a process management tool. It's not just a spreadsheet, it's a tool that we're all supposed to use as staff to validate requirements at the garrison, and I believe it's also going to serve the purpose of enabling us to monitor execution, budget execution throughout the fiscal year, which is something, if you're from the Southeast, we didn't do with the spend plan. We really didn't monitor MDEP execution last year, and so I think we'll be able to do that this year in a way that we didn't, and that's an enhancement. As I mentioned, it's used by the staff to validate requirements of our functional counterparts, and in that sense, it serves the purpose of ensuring compliance as well. So I think those are both region roles of ensuring compliance and monitoring budget execution. It is we call it a one-stop shop for data source for functional decision making, and it really, again, it's a management tool for decision making downstream that's predicated on ensuring we get the baseline right up front. And make no mistake, the lion's share of the work lies with the garrisons to provide the baseline data. But don't get too comfortable. As a functional, we'll have about a month to validate those requirements on board early. He says he trusts the rearview mirror more than he trusts the headlights. He'll take last year's execution numbers before he'll take a projection of what could happen next year. And that's important for functionals as we validate future requirements, and this spend plan in particular from these garrisons, many of whom have never done this before, that we got to be looking for those things where they're just trying to say, what if drill, this could happen, this is why this MDEP is going to double or increase by 45%. We need to be looking for that and vetting that as a functional. I think you'll see in the timeline in the month of November is when we get a chance to actually tease out those issues. But we're expected to help the garrisons get that baseline data right. And if we get it right, then we can use it for decision making in terms of hiring, approval, validation, and service contract approval. The second one is it establishes a baseline for a year of execution with garrison commanders. In Mr. Tyndall's mind, this is a contract between the garrison commander and the region director. This is what he will keep on his desk. If there are 15 MDEPs on a garrison, all 15 MDEPs will be stapled together, collated, stuck on his desk, and when that garrison commander calls him and says, hey sir, I need your help getting this contract approved, he's going to say, is it in your spend plan? Let's go to your MDEP briefing. And that's what he's referring to, is this. And if it's listed there, and it's unfunded below the cut line, he will have visibility. And if it's not, then that'll be the ensuing question. What happened since you briefed me, and why is this a new requirement you couldn't anticipate 3 days ago? Like I say, it's kind of serves as a contract for what is allowed in terms of hiring and what is allowed in terms of non-pay execution. The better we get the baseline, the easier it'll be to execute downstream. And then, of course, the last piece is so that we're all on the same sheet of music. Obviously, we operate in different spheres. The risks and the functionals both use this, and we will see different pieces of the elephant, so it helps us in that regard. Going to the next slide about the staff roles, the one we're missing on this is the RM. The RM owns this process, and I say that proudly. I'm a user. That's all I do. I'm a user as a functional. But the RM owns the process, and so where it'll channel, while the functional counterparts have to be in constant communication and there are multiple channels of information flow, the process is owned by Dave and all of his RMs in the Atlantic region, and that's where the official documents will lay. So that's almost implicit on the slide, but he's the process owner, the rest of us are just users. The functionals, we use it to validate manpower and service contract dollars, non-paid dollars, and any unforeseen requirements as they come in. The risks, I think, and here, it's kind of speculation. We think this is what, the risks are able to see across your footprints trends in certain areas that we may not pick up because either the functional view is too broad and we can't pick it up, or too narrow and we're dealing with an issue but you see something that we can't see. And I think the risk will have a slightly different view of the spend plan. You might see things in the training arena, Pete, that are similar across all training installations that could be shared with others and add value to it. With that said, we can turn to how the spend plan is constructed, populated initially by the RM and then ultimately populated by the garrisons and then briefed to the RD. If we get it wrong as a staff validation, I mentioned the month of November, if we get that wrong, the garrisons will have to rebrief it to the RD until they get it right. So it's not just a garrison responsibility. We as functionals own the quality of the data by working with our functionals to make sure we've identified those things that are squishy and those things that are firm.
Basically what I'm going to walk you through is design and function, and I'm going to do them in that order. To start off, I'm going to show you the assumptions we made. Of course, these were assumptions as of today. I mean, these things are very fluid. We know that 13 TDA is going to be our manpower target. Now, that's a pretty safe assumption. How we get there is not a safe assumption until we see an op board that comes out where the garrisons start developing their execution plans. That will affect the design of this piece of paper. Because right now, comes out where the garrisons start developing their execution plans. That will affect the design of this piece of paper. Because right now, we may need to add an element or two in there that talks to what the garrison's plan is for bringing any particular MDEP down or up, because there's some that did go up in MDEPs. But in the aggregate, where's the garrison in terms of managing their manpower to their 13 TDA? We're looking at controllable spending. These would be things that we own, BOSS funds, SRM funds, 1-to-1 in some cases, because G3, we're a pass-through. The command is generally a pass-through on some accounts. And we have owners external to the program, that are external to the command, that actually resource those programs. And we normalize for inflation buy-ins. And the point to make there is that when we develop the baseline numbers for FY 12, we will be using, Mitch has a very detailed audit trail of what we do to adjust each garrison, up or down, depending on what's going on at that garrison or what went on that's a sustaining mission in the prior year. As an example, let's look at Fort Lee as an example. When we built the FY10 baseline number, we used their prior year execution. We adjusted for inflation. We normalized out all their one-times. And then we annualized their growth. Because as you're aware, BRAC sites, most of their growth came on in phases. And most of that phase was in the fourth quarter of the ending year. And so you only have a quarter's worth of BRAC growth cost in your execution number. So you can't just take execution and match it against the next year and say, wow, why'd you go up 30%? Well, if you do that, you've left off a big hunk of change that you've had to annualize the cost of your BRAC. So we annualize costs in there where there is validated or directed growth. The ASAP program, again, most garrisons won't have an annual cost in their execution numbers for FY 11 as we end the year. So we're going to have to annualize that cost. So it gives you a baseline to start from to do your comparisons. And there is you won't see that on these spend plans. You'll see that number on the spend plan. When we put down there what their base number is, the process goes is that Mitch does his audit trail, and it is an audit trail. There is a line item for every up or every down at a garrison. So you'd be able to look and see